Таны төлөө эх орн чинь юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуухаас өмнө та өөрөө эх орныхон төлөө юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуу. Ян Фэжерал.
Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчтэй. Өнөөдөр манай нэвтрүүлэгт Францын элчин сайд Jean-Paul Dumont оролцож байна.
Jean-Paul Dumont Франц улсаас Монгол улсад суугаа онц бөгөөд бүрэн эрхт элчин сайд. 1948 оны 8 дугаар сарын 1-нд төрсөн. Сен-Серван-Сюр-Мер дэх Жан Шаркогийн лицей, дорн дахны судлалын үндэсний дээд сургуулийг дүүргэсэн. Гадаад хэргийн дээд шатны зөвлөх цолтой эрхэлж байсан ажил 1971-ээс 1975 онд Улаанбаатар болон Бээжин дэх элчин сайдын яамд атааши. 1975-аас 1980 оны хооронд Францын гадаад хэргийн яамны захиргаа, консулын газар, Аз номхон далайн газар, Солонгосын хэлтэст ажиллаж байсан. Хонконг, Америк нэгдсэн улс, Вьетнам, Бразил, Бельги, Алжир улсуудад элчин сайд, дипломат төлөөлөгчөөр тус тус ажиллаж байсан байна. 2009 оны 6 дугаар сараас Монгол улсад суугаа Францын онц бөгөөд бүрэн эрхт элчин сайдаар ажиллаж байна. Хүндэт лигоны одон, үндэсний гавьяаны одонгоор шагнагдсан. Англи, Хятад, Орос, Португал хэлтэй.
Good evening, monsieur.
Sambayno.
Let's talk about how you become a diplomat. I was wondering, you are western part of France.
Yes.
And you studied Chinese. And how come you came to Mongolia? How you became a diplomat?
It's a very intimate question. I would say that it was not forecasted at the beginning that I would be a diplomat, since I was born in a farming family. But this farm was close to the sea, and in this area most of the boys want to go to sea or to travel or to go somewhere else. I was bad in mathematics, so diplomat was the good way to travel.
Doesn't mean that all French diplomats cannot do well with mathematics.
Sometimes they do, because mathematics has been used for sometimes to make the difference between good and bad pupils.
Well, in order to go to sea, you better to know math at that time.
At that time, I didn't like them.
Okay. So how come you ended up with Mongolia? You came here in 1971 until 1975. You were...
I had just graduated from the School of Oriental Studies in Chinese, and I had also a Russian option. And they were searching for somebody who would come here as an aide to the ambassador. And it was so hard to find them that we had the opportunity to do our national service.
Who was the ambassador at that time? Was he first ambassador?
The first ambassador, Georges Perruche.
To Mongolia?
Yes, he was, I would say, somebody I respected very much, very admirable man. He had been a prisoner of war in North Korea. In North Korea for 3 years. So he had quite a sense of life, which was very interesting to share with him.
Well, everybody who was in the war, they value the life, the value of life more than anybody who was not in the war. So you became as an aide to the first French ambassador to this country.
Yes.
And it was a time of very, very cold war.
Oh, it was Cold War, I would say, on two fronts. East-West and Soviet-Chinese. It was in the 71, from 71 to 74, so just a few years after the Ussuri incidents. There were quite a lot of Soviet soldiers in Mongolia. I know Mongolia was under this socialist regime, and so diplomats like us were here. We were very few, only the British and the French at the beginning.
Have you seen a big movement of Soviet military in Mongolia or through Ulaanbaatar way, where could you feel that presence of military?
More out of Ulaanbaatar, maybe along, for example, the railway. At that time, there were no flights to China, so the only way to travel was the train. And they were all along the train from Ulaanbaatar to Zaminoud. So it was. I think they were on show.
Okay.
We didn't have to look; they were on show.
So have you been on that train at that time when you were a young diplomat in Mongolia, on the train between Beijing and Ulaanbaatar?
Yes.
What was like this?
I liked it. 24 times.
Who was serving?
Sorry.
Chinese or Mongolians? Or
Chinese.
Chinese.
Yes, it was a Chinese train with Chinese stewards. And it was going quite slowly. So, but it's the same. I just traveled to Saint-Chan a few weeks ago, and it was the same.
Almost
speed.
the same after 30 years. How about this cross-border, the train, the wheel change, all this stuff? Is the same too?
Yes, but it was not new for me. I had encountered it between Soviet Union and Poland. It was the same, changing the wheels took time.
You have been working with Russia, you learned Russian.
I learned Russian, but I've never been working with Russia.
Okay, then after Mongolia, you went to where?
I came back to Paris to pass my exams to become a diplomat. And after that, I have been served in Paris, of course, in various positions at the Asian department, in the staff of our minister. But also I served in Hong Kong, in United States, Vietnam, Brazil, Belgium, Algeria, Caribbean.
Vietnam?
Vietnam, yes. I was for 4 years Consul General in Ho Chi Minh City.
Okay. So you came as ambassador after how many years to this country? Of your service, say 75 when you had left?
38 years.
38 years after to New Mongolia.
To New Mongolia.
New Ulaanbaatar.
Very New Mongolia.
Traffic jam, terrible air.
But I forget it. What I like is to have Mongolian friends.
Okay.
To have the opportunity to talk with you today. That was something we could not imagine.
Have you met your friends from that time when you came back?
Yes.
Could you mention a couple of them?
The Japanese ambassador.
Okay.
But also a former ambassador in Paris, who is now vice president of Areva Mongol.
Well, say 35 years, almost 40 years since that.
Yes, yes.
What kind of major things happened in between two countries, among people, or in the cultural relations? What particular things you would like to highlight?
No, this relationship is quite old now. We have commemorated the 45th anniversary of relations. But I would say that from 1965 or 66 for the opening of the embassy to the democratic revolution in Mongolia, these have been relations, I would say, formal relations. With one exception, cultural. We had an agreement, French teaching in the university, Mongolian studies in Paris. And this has remained, I would say, the hardcore of our relationship. The Mongolian studies in Paris maybe are the most advanced in Europe.
About cultural relations of two countries. So you said very interesting, Lee, that culture was something that was always kept developing.
Yes. And even, because for 12 years, the embassy was closed. As you know, it was in the Tsochit Budal.
Ulaanbaatar Tsochit Budal, yes.
And for 12 years, the embassy was closed, as I told you, because budgetary reasons. The government felt that, the current government at that time felt that there were not substantial relations enough to maintain an embassy. It was closed. But the French teaching remained during that time.
And French, they were always French teachers?
Yes.
In Mongolia?
Yes. There have always been. I would say French teaching has started maybe with Professor Rinchen or something at that time.
Still we have a lot per capita.